Hey everybody, Dieter Kurtenbach with Larry Kruger here in the KMBR studios, breaking down the 49ers and the Rams coming up for you. Breakfast, brunch with the 49ers. Worst case scenario will be over quickly for y'all. On KMBR 680, 10 a.m. on Sunday. And Larry, you look at this game and you look at this Rams defense, and it's probably the worst possible thing that could happen for this 49ers offense at this period of time. Kaepernick's all out of whack. Anquan Boldin's got the hamstring injury. Carlos Hyde's foot's all busted up, and this Rams defense flies. This game looks like a Widowmaker game to me. How do you see the 49ers being successful against this Rams team?
Well, first of all, 7 a.m. pregame. Don't forget 7 a.m. pregame on KMBR with myself, Kevin Lynch, and Rich Walkoff. It's going to be a really difficult game. 49ers have 3 offensive linemen rated in the bottom of the league, going up against the best front. Long and Quinn on the outside command double teams. Brockers is a load inside, and the best player on this front is Aaron Donald, who in a lot of ways is kind of a poor man's Bryant Young. Very quick feet, very athletic, really high revving motor. It's going to be a long day at the office. Now, the one thing about the 49ers, the one angle on this game that's interesting is that the Rams corners, Tremaine Johnson and Janoris Jenkins, are really susceptible to double moves. Mm-hmm. But can this offensive line block long enough to give... to make it viable that the 49ers can somehow, receivers can create that double move action and potentially shake free down the field? That's going to be an interesting question. I would say it's going to be, the odds are slim that they'll be able to make big pass plays, but that's the weakness of the Rams defense is their corners are very hyper aggressive and oftentimes get burned with the double move. Torrey Smith and Anquan Boldin are the right receivers, but does Kaepernick have enough time to throw?
If you watch that game on Thursday against the Seahawks, Anquan Boldin was questionable for that game. He played it. A couple of times you saw him trying to make moves down the field, just not a one-cut thing, trying to make that double move, and you could just tell the hamstring was busted up. Hopefully the long rest from that Thursday game helps him in recovering from that, but that's one of those injuries that you imagine kind of lingers throughout the season. So concern there. Offensively, though, if the 49ers offense is bad, the Rams offense is just as bad. They have kind of a star running back like the Niners do in Hyde and Todd Gurley, who's been awesome in the last couple of weeks, but no real receiver help, a quarterback that can't seem to get the ball into the right place. And against this 49ers defense, which has been pretty good against the rush lately, you have to imagine that there's some level of evenness going on in this game, no?
Yeah, no, I think you broke it down well. The Rams aren't going to light up the skies, but Todd Gurley is not just any other running back. He's a big back. He's almost 220 pounds. He runs upright, but he is very quick to and through the hole. So he breaks tackles. He's a force. He's one of the best backs in football. I think he was the best back in the draft, and it's starting to show. So I would imagine the 49ers are going to load up at the line of scrimmage and try to take Gurley away. And then that's going to put their cornerbacks out on the island and maybe in man coverage. We'll see if Nick Foles can make them pay. Yeah. I think the Rams have their own struggles on offense, but I think it's going to be a real challenge for the Niners to really shut down Gurley. In fact, I don't think he's a back who you can shut down. I think you just have to try to limit him.
When you look at the 49ers corners, though, I think that so far this year we haven't really given them a lot of scorn, but they haven't been great unless they've been in zone coverage. Man-to-man has been touch and go at best for those guys. Have other teams noticed that? Do you think that they've noticed that these 49ers corners, if you can get them in cover one man-to-man situations, that they're susceptible to being beat, or not, because they haven't really exploited it yet?
Yeah, I mean, Acker may lack a little deep speed, and Tremaine Brock is probably their best pure cover corner, where the 49ers, I think, are get exploited a little bit, or exposed, I should say, is when the opposing teams put the third wide receiver on the field, and they've got to go put their third corner out there. You're going to see a lot of Jimmy Ward in the slot, and Jimmy Ward has been giving up a completion percentage of 74%. Yeah. That's not very good. So I think that's going to that's not a good thing. So I think that's the one area you may see the Rams attack. You may see them go 3 wide receivers a little bit more.
And that would be with Stedman Bailey too, who isn't exactly an easy guy to stay with. So that's a pretty good point. Offensively for the Niners, I mean, pick your poison week in, week out. Carlos Hyde, it's tough to watch him run at certain points. This offensive line's giving him nothing to work with, and he just doesn't have that same explosiveness. It's not coming back this year. It's hard to imagine without a couple of games off that foot's going to fully heal. Can Reggie Bush give this team something, or do they need to just go with Mike Davis or an outside option in Pierre Thomas or somebody else like that to give them consistent play? Because at a certain point, Hyde is the best player on this team, but he might be too injured to be a consistently good option for them.
Yeah, I don't know that Bush is going to have the durability to really man that job. I mean, this is a 49er team that wants to run between the tackles.
Yeah.
He's not that guy. I would say Mike Davis is more that guy, but I mean, Mike Davis is fourth-round pick, middling skills, not a lot of speed, not the most physical runner, still a young player. You always worry about pass protection with young backs. So I don't know that they have the back on the roster to complement Carlos Hyde. I think you may see them use Bruce Ellington, Quentin Patton on some fly sweeps, some direct handoffs. You may see them try to create what amounts to a running game with a short passing game where they're taking three-step drops or a little bit more, hitch passes. They've been doing that early in games to kind of loosen up the defense. I think you're going to see more of that against this Rams team.
And that is, especially with those corners being so aggressive, that quick hit slant over the middle is probably the best way to get yards with this team. It's really the only way over the last couple of games that any team's been able to do it, unless you have a quarterback like Aaron Rodgers, who was able to really work the Rams secondary, kind of how he wanted late in that game. Offensive line, every week it's a concern. Every week it's pretty much the same thing. That right side is really, really rough with Pears and Devy or Tiller. But I think that Marcus Martin's kind of avoided some scorn. And Pro Football Focus this morning put out their top 32 centers in the NFL. Marcus Martin wasn't one of them. Is this a make or break game for him? I mean, at some point there has to be a change on that line. The 49ers don't seem to want to choose Tiller or Devy. They keep splitting snaps there. There's no better option on the roster, really on the street, than Pears at this juncture. Offensive line plays so bad. But Marcus Martin, the 49ers are the worst team in the NFL at rushing up the middle. He's rating in the 30s on Pro Football Focus, which is laughable. What can you do with a guy who can't hold the middle of the line like that? Is this a make or break for him?
Well, physically, he's got what you want. He's 6'3", he's 320 pounds. I think they're showing a lot of patience with him because the general manager invested a third-round draft choice in him, and they don't want to quit on a third-round draft choice and acknowledge that was another pick that's a bust.
Yeah.
But the truth is that they clearly don't have a lot of confidence in Marcus Martin. They brought in Samson Satele last week for a workout. They didn't opt to sign him, but I think that spoke loudly as to their kind of insecurity about what they're going to get out of the center position. They have other guys that they could slide to center. I think they really want to give Martin a few more weeks to see if he can play his way out of it. He's still a very young player.
Of course.
And he's an inexperienced player. And right now he's taking his lumps because unfortunately the center position is the position you have to make all the calls and usually requires a veteran hand. And in fact, most teams would be willing to take a little bit less in physicality for a little bit more in just reps and experience and being able to recognize what fronts are the defense is in, what coverages you're facing. So I think, as I said, I think they're going to go with Martin because I think they've invested a high third-round pick in him. They don't want to acknowledge that was a bust pick. So I think you're going to see him probably for the rest of the year. But if he continues to struggle, you may see them shift somebody in there right away.
Well, you remember in the preseason, they had him at guard for most of the preseason, and they shift him over to center. They move Looney out of town. They go out and get Easton from the Ravens. They send him off before really ever having a chance to prove himself. It's just been a strange rotation with this, and no one knows when Kilgore is going to come back. It seems
he was hitting the sleds this week. He was pushing the sleds, which is the beginning. And maybe we'll see him. You're not going to see him this week.
Right.
You may see him in 2 weeks. You may see him in 3 weeks. I think Martin for sure has that job until Kilgore steps in. They'd like to have Kilgore, though, because Kilgore's the veteran.
And he had a great year last year.
He had a very good year. And, he's not an all-world center. He's not Dwight Stevenson in his prime or Nick Mangold even. But he's a better player than Martin and a more efficient player than Martin. And I think they'd like to get him in there.
It's just interesting, the juxtaposition of we want to ride a guy and not maybe admit that he's a bust because of what we've invested in him now. At the same time, this season is still at least in the level of plausibility, it's possible for this team to make the playoffs. I mean, looking at it, we all know that it's not possible for this team to make the playoffs, but it's so early in the season to write them off officially. They haven't been officially eliminated from everything or anything, and to sort of pack in like that and not lick your wounds and just pretend like, oh, this is going to be fine, we're going to work this out. You're not putting your team in a position to win games in such a manner. It's a very strange juxtaposition. When do they finally decide, okay, this team can't make the playoffs and we need to start thinking about next year and beyond? Because they're doing it with Martin currently. There's no argument. I don't think there can be an argument made that Marcus Martin gives the 49ers a good chance to win this week or next week. But he might down the line if you give him more reps. When does that position change? Because it looks like they're balancing out both of them right now and doing a poor job at it.
I'd say Sunday at about 2 o'clock in the afternoon.
Yeah.
I mean, to be totally honest, I think this is a winnable game for the 49ers, yet this Rams team's physical. The game will be played in their building, on their turf. But this is a winnable game. 49ers have had some success against the Rams, and Kaepernick's had some success against the Rams. So I think they're circling the wagons. I think this is a huge game for the 49ers as far as this season and any kind of viability they have in it going forward. Next week after that, I believe, is the Falcons.
Yes.
And then you're talking about the bye week. And I think, they have to win. They got to win at least one of these two games, and I would say preferably two, going into that bye week. If they lose both these games, I think you're going to see that bye week be the time where Blaine Gabbert steps in for Colin Kaepernick, and you may see widespread changes across their personnel landscape. But I think this week and next week they're going to put out what they think are their best players that can win right now and see if they can get a win or two.
It will be interesting specifically with Kaepernick, and we've talked about this for weeks now, and nothing ever really seems to progress. He has a good game, then he has a couple bad games, and we are where we're at. But the trade deadline, Colin Kaepernick still has value, and some other team in the league, in Philadelphia is the one that's tossed around most frequently, might see value in bringing a guy like Colin Kaepernick in, and the 49ers won't want to totally cut him or totally leave him on the bench. They might want to get some value back for him if they do decide to move on from him this season. That trade deadline comes up next week, and which, bad timing for the Niners, you prefer it to come after that Atlanta game with the bye week, but maybe that trade deadline creates the force that's necessary to make some roster changes or at least go with a different quarterback, which will then have a trickle-down effect throughout the roster. We don't know yet. We have to see how they perform on Sunday, but this game could either get positive momentum in their direction for the first time in a couple of weeks, or it could be the beginning of the end, or the end, frankly.
Yeah, the thing is, we don't know.
Right.
The NFL, there aren't a lot of trades. There just haven't been a lot of trades made. A couple of years ago, we saw Carson Palmer move from the Bengals to the Raiders at the trade deadline, but there really aren't a lot of trades. Have the 49ers given up on Colin Kaepernick? We don't know that. How do they feel about Blaine Gabbert? We don't know that. What we do know, though, is that Colin Kaepernick is struggling, but he's also not the worst quarterback in the NFL.
Right.
I think Buffalo, Cleveland, there's 3 or 4 teams, Houston, Philadelphia maybe.
Right.
There are 4 or 5 teams around the NFL that may look at him and say, you know what, arm strength, foot speed, the 49ers are a mess, we can do it where they couldn't do it, and we can coach them up. And there may be that belief, and if there is, there may be some team out there that's willing to give the 49ers a player or a package of a player and a pick or two for Colin Kaepernick. But then the 49ers also have to decide, is this the route they want to go? Typically, you don't get rid of a quarterback in the NFL until you have the next guy sitting there. And they don't have the next guy sitting there unless you believe Blaine Gabbert is that guy. And
they have to give Blaine a chance at some point.
They're going to have to give him a chance at some point.
Because they can't go through 16 games.
But you're not going to get rid of a quarterback that may be the 17th best quarterback in the NFL. So you can play, the 22nd best quarterback in the NFL? So this is a very difficult decision going forward. And the other reason it's so difficult, Dieter, is just the skill set. The arm strength, the foot speed, the athleticism, the toughness, the durability. I mean, Kaepernick is all those things. He's durable, he's tough, he's got great arm strength, he's got great foot speed. Theoretically, he could go to somebody else's system and thrive. And then you look really, really bad.
Yeah, when does it become a coaching issue? When is it that they're not putting him in the right position? It's obviously everything all in one, and it's the microcosmic effect of what's going wrong with the 49ers. It's easy to look at the quarterback. It's easy to look at a complex situation like this that doesn't have one definitive answer and just go, well, that's the problem, get rid of that, and everything's solved. There's your cancer.
If you pull the trigger on a trade, you better get something of significance, or you better be absolutely convinced that the guy will never amount to anything in the NFL.
Oh, so there's no stakes at all. Jeez, yeah, it's the heavy, man. That's where we're at.
Ultimately, these are tough decisions, and that's why when you lose 5 out of the first 7 games that you play, when your quarterback that you've invested millions in backslides, you're faced with nothing but tough decisions. And then you've got a draft coming up where you may have a top 5 pick, and you got Paxton Lynch, you got Jared Goff, you got some decent quarterback prospects outside of that duo. So picking the next quarterback, if Kaepernick is not it, is the biggest decision they have in front of them.
That decision's coming up here pretty soon, though, and a big part of that decision is definitely going to be Sunday's game, 7 o'clock a.m. Have breakfast with Larry Krueger on your radio. KMBR 680, we'll have the game for you at 10 a.m. For Larry Krueger, Dieter Kurtenbach, Night Australia. What the fuck was that?
Australia.